You are paying a visibility tax right now, and it is mathematically guaranteeing that your family will never build generational wealth. While everyone else is busy performing their income online, chasing high-revenue screenshots, leasing depreciating liabilities, and financing an aesthetic just to look successful to strangers. The truly wealthy are operating in complete, impenetrable silence. They aren't trying to go viral. They are actively paying money to remain completely invisible. 2 weeks ago, at a private estate sale of a man nobody in his neighborhood knew was worth over $45 million, I found a battered, unremarkable book sitting at the bottom of a dusty cardboard box. It cost me exactly $4. But inside the front cover, written in faded blue ink from decades ago, wasn't a diary, a secret will, or a stock portfolio. It was a handwritten list of 5 brutal, uncompromising rules, the exact hidden architecture of old money. These aren't the generic skip your daily latte tips, and they certainly aren't the flashy leverage to the gills trading strategies currently dominating your feed. In fact, everything you've been taught about building wealth by modern internet culture is actually designed to keep you trapped on the hamster wheel. The algorithm feeds you advice on how to look rich, while the old money families are quietly passing down uncrackable financial fortresses. Rule number 1 on this handwritten list directly violates what every single financial guru is screaming at you to do right now. Rule number 4 explains the exact psychological trap that ensures the people driving the loudest, most expensive cars are usually the ones teetering on the edge of personal bankruptcy. But it was the 5th rule, a single terrifying sentence about the true cost of your reputation, that completely shattered my entire understanding of money and success. We are going to break down exactly what was written inside that $4 book. You will discover why touching the principal is the ultimate financial sin, the compounding gap between cheap and deliberate spending, and why time is the only asset on earth that cannot be repurchased. Once you understand the reality of the visibility tax, the way you manage, spend, and hide your money will shift forever. Let us break down the exact mechanics of this visibility tax, because you are paying it every single day without even realizing it. Right now, you are bleeding capital just to exist in the modern social hierarchy. You get a promotion, so you immediately upgrade your apartment. Your business has a good quarter, so you finance a luxury car that matches your new perceived status. You are buying things you don't even really want, using money you just traded your finite, unrecoverable life energy to get, simply to signal to people you don't even like that you are doing well. It is a psychological prison built out of brand names, premium subscriptions, and lifestyle inflation. The man who owned this $4 book, let's call him Arthur, refused to pay this tax. When I pulled up to his estate sale 2 weeks ago, I was expecting wrought iron gates, a sprawling manicured lawn, and a driveway paved with imported Italian stone. After all, this was a man who died with a net worth north of $45 million. What I found instead was a completely average, well-maintained, 4-bedroom brick home at the end of a quiet, unremarkable cul-de-sac. The paint was peeling slightly on the window frames. The cars sitting in the driveway were a 12-year-old Honda and a dented Ford truck. This wasn't because Arthur couldn't afford a fleet of Rolls-Royces. It was because Arthur understood that his house was a camouflage net. He knew that the exact moment you display wealth, you become a target. You become a target for salespeople, a target for friends needing loans, a target for frivolous lawsuits, and most dangerously, a target for your own ego. While his neighbors, drowning in credit card debt and leveraged to the hilt on HELOC loans, were busy washing their leased Mercedes SUVs in their driveways, Arthur was quietly amassing a financial empire in municipal bonds, boring index funds, and cash-flowing commercial real estate. Inside Arthur's home, the estate liquidators had tagged everything with little neon stickers. Local bargain hunters and amateur antique dealers were swarming the dining room, practically fighting each other over silver cutlery and vintage watches. They were completely missing the actual treasure because they were too busy hunting for the superficial residue of wealth. I found the cardboard box sitting in the dark corner of a damp basement office. It was lazily labeled Miscellaneous Paperbacks, $4. The book itself had no title on the spine. It was bound in faded navy blue cloth, the edges severely frayed from decades of constant handling. When I opened it, the first page didn't have a signature or a date. It had a warning. It read, "A fool performs his wealth, a master buries it." Think about the agonizing pain of your current financial reality. Look at the money flowing into your bank account on payday and watch how violently it flows right back out. You are highly educated, you have side hustles, you track your macros, you optimize your morning routine, and yet, at the end of the month, you feel like you are barely treading water. You are a Henry, a high earner, not rich yet, but the terrifying unspoken truth of the modern economy is that the yet is a complete lie. If you keep operating under the Internet's blueprint of success, Huck, you will never be rich. The entire modern financial ecosystem is a beautifully designed, inescapable trap. The algorithm has convinced you that wealth is a cosmetic aesthetic. It force-feeds you a daily, toxic diet of 19-year-olds in Dubai penthouses and dropshippers standing next to rented Lamborghinis. This creates an invisible, crushing psychological pressure, forcing you to spend your surplus income, the exact capital that is supposed to buy your future freedom, on maintaining a digital facade. You are financing an illusion. You are trading permanent generational freedom for temporary, meaningless validation in the comment section. Arthur's book refers to this as the parasite of the ego. Every single time you buy a depreciating asset to signal success, you are not just losing the purchase price. You are brutally murdering the compound interest that money would have generated over the next 40 years. You are stealing from your future self, and you are stealing from your unborn grandchildren. You are keeping your own bloodline in financial slavery simply because you couldn't bear the thought of looking average. This is the ultimate silent tragedy of the middle and upper middle class. You are making six figures, but you are a financial hostage. Your money isn't a tool, it's a leash. You are trapped in an exhausting cycle of earning to spend and spending to prove you earn. And the moment the music stops, the moment the tech bubble bursts, the real estate market corrects, or your specific industry gets automated by AI, the entire facade instantly collapses, leaving you with nothing but massive car payments, an underwater mortgage, and a closet full of designer clothes you cannot liquidate to save your life. So, what is the antidote? What was written in faded blue ink on page 2 of Arthur's battered book? What is rule number 1 of the old money architecture? If you listen to the modern financial gurus dominating your feed, they will tell you the answer is extreme frugality. They will scream at you to cut up your credit cards, live on rice and beans, cancel your $5 coffee, and hoard your cash in a high-yield savings account until you are 65 years old. They want you to believe that miserable deprivation is the only path to financial salvation. But Arthur's first rule has absolutely nothing to do with saving money. In fact, if you try to save your way to wealth, you are playing right into the hands of the very system designed to bankrupt you. Here is the exact quote, word for word, from rule number 1. Cash is a melting block of ice. The only purpose of $1 is to buy a soldier, and a soldier's only purpose is to capture territory. If you are hoarding soldiers, you have already lost the war. Arthur didn't view money as a reward. He viewed it as ammunition. Every time you leave your money sitting in a standard checking account, inflation is systematically executing your soldiers while you sleep. You think you're playing it safe. In reality, you are bleeding purchasing power by the second. The algorithm tells you to save. Old money knows that saving fiat currency is a guaranteed death sentence. The wealthy do not hold cash, they hold assets that produce cash. The moment Arthur got paid, he drafted his soldiers and sent them straight to the front lines to capture territory, real estate, boring industrial stocks, high-yield municipal bonds. He bought the land, he secured the perimeter, and once that territory was captured, he instituted rule number 2, a rule so rigid it borders on religious dogma. Rule number 2, never, under any circumstance, touch the principal. Most people think the principal is a rainy day fund. You dip into it when the car transmission blows, or you drain it to put a down payment on a luxury SUV. That is middle-class thinking. In the architecture of old money, the principal is a sacred, untouchable monolith. It is the golden goose. You do not carve up the goose to feed your ego. You only eat the eggs. And if you are truly playing the generational wealth game, you don't even eat the eggs. You incubate them. You hatch more geese. You wait until you have an entire flock, and you only consume the eggs that the second generation of geese produce. You live exclusively off the dividends of your dividends. Your lifestyle is funded by money that your money made. The principal remains completely invisible, locked away in an impenetrable vault. But this creates an agonizing friction point. How do you survive while you are waiting for the geese to multiply? How do you live in the real world without touching the principal? This brings us to the third entry in Arthur's book, a concept that absolutely destroys the Internet's favorite frugal living myth. Rule number 3, the devastating gap between cheapness and deliberate spending. Arthur wrote, "A cheap man pays twice. A deliberate man buys forever. When you buy fast fashion clothing, it disintegrates in 6 months, forcing you back to the store. When you buy a poorly made appliance just to save $50, it breaks down, ruins your weekend, and demands a repair bill. Being cheap is mathematically inefficient. It constantly drains your capital and quietly murders your most valuable asset, your time. Old money does not buy cheap. They buy uncompromising quality, but they buy it once. They purchase a pair of $400 Goodyear welted boots, and they wear them for 25 years. They buy solid wood furniture that outlasts their own lifespan. They aren't afraid to spend heavy capital, but they strictly isolate their spending to things that hold intrinsic value. Right now, you're leaking thousands of dollars a year on replacements, premium subscriptions, and micro upgrades. You are optimizing for the lowest initial price rather than the lowest lifetime cost. You are caught in the corporate trap of planned obsolescence. But the disposable items you buy aren't what will actually bankrupt you. It's why you buy them. Turn to page 14 of Arthur's book, and the ink gets heavier. The handwriting is sharper. This is rule number 4, the exact psychological trap explaining why the guy in your office who just leased the brand new Porsche is secretly sweating bullets every time his phone rings. Rule number 4. Debt taken for vanity is financial suicide. Arthur's exact words were, "If you must borrow to show them you have arrived, you are already lost." We live in a hyper-connected culture that normalizes leveraging your future to fund your present. You are told to leverage everything. You use buy now, pay later for clothes. You use a HELOC to fund a kitchen remodel purely for Instagram aesthetics. You lease cars you cannot afford to drive to a job you hate to impress people who actively want to see you fail. This is the visibility tax in its purest, most toxic form. You are paying a massive premium, literally paying compound interest to a massive banking institution, just to maintain an illusion of competence. Old money uses debt too, but the mechanics are entirely inverted. New money uses debt to buy depreciating liabilities. Old money uses debt exclusively to acquire cash-flowing assets. They leverage the bank's money to buy a commercial warehouse, and then they let the corporate tenants pay off the mortgage. New money takes on debt to look wealthy in public. Old money takes on debt to get richer in absolute total silence. Think about the sheer, suffocating anxiety of the new money lifestyle. Your income is high, but your burn rate is astronomical. One missed paycheck, one unexpected medical emergency, one market downturn, and the entire house of cards collapses overnight. The leased luxury car gets repossessed. The maxed-out credit cards go to collections. It is a life lived on a razor's edge, masked by a curated digital feed. You are one bad month away from total ruin. Arthur drove a dented Ford truck because a vehicle's only function is utility. He lived in a brick house on a quiet cul-de-sac because it offered shelter and perfect anonymity. By refusing to play the modern status game, he eliminated financial anxiety from his life entirely. He was a ghost. He was untouchable. But eliminating anxiety is just the baseline. It's defensive strategy. To build an uncrackable, multi-generational fortress, defense is not enough. You can deploy your soldiers perfectly. You can refuse to touch your principal. You can buy for life and ruthlessly reject vanity debt. But if you fail to grasp the final variable, your wealth will inevitably be stripped from you anyway. Because the fifth rule is not actually about your money. It is about the one intangible asset that dictates how the world extracts money from you. It is a single, terrifying sentence about the true, inescapable cost of your reputation. And once you read it, the way you speak, the way you dress, and the way you operate in public will never be the same. I turned to the final pages of the frayed navy blue book. The binding was practically falling apart in my hands, the thread completely bare. This was the section of the book Arthur had clearly revisited the most. The pages were dog-eared, heavily worn, and the handwriting was pressed so fiercely into the paper that you could feel the indentations of the pen on the other side. This was rule number 5. The terrifying sentence about the true, inescapable cost of your reputation. The ultimate secret to the visibility tax. In faded, unyielding ink, Arthur had written, "To be recognized as wealthy is the most devastating financial liability a man can ever carry." Read that again, let it sink in. Everything you have been taught by modern culture screams at you to build a personal brand, to flex your success, to make sure everyone in your hometown knows exactly how well you are doing. But Arthur understood the brutal physics of the real world. The exact moment you are perceived as rich, you cease to be a person and you become a resource. When you drive a luxury car and wear a heavy gold watch, the world quietly, systematically inflates your cost of living. The contractor who comes to fix your roof sees the Porsche in the driveway and instantly adds 30% to his quote. The mechanic finds a few extra things to fix. Acquaintances suddenly approach you with high-risk investment opportunities they expect you to fund. Friends and family begin to view your boundaries as stinginess, subconsciously expecting you to pick up every dinner check and subsidize their poor decisions. Your loud reputation precedes your invoice, and the world begins to aggressively extract its premium. But the external extraction is nothing compared to the internal psychological prison you build for yourself. This is where the visibility tax becomes a lethal trap. When you build a reputation as the successful one, you become permanently chained to that avatar. You are forced into a relentless, exhausting performance. You can never downgrade. You can never be seen flying economy, living in a smaller house, or wearing last season's clothes. You begin making financial decisions not based on what is best for your actual balance sheet, but on how those decisions will be perceived by your audience. And that brings us to the most painful, devastating realization of all. The open loop that explains exactly why time is the only asset on earth that cannot be repurchased. Every single time you buy something you do not need, simply to uphold a wealthy reputation, you are not paying for it with money. You are paying for it with hours of your life. You are trading the most finite, sacred, unrecoverable resource in the universe, your actual time on earth, to buy depreciating metal and fabric designed to impress people who do not care about you. You are sitting in traffic, stressing over corporate politics, and sacrificing time with your children, all to fund an illusion. You are quite literally working yourself into an early grave just to afford the visibility tax. Arthur refused to pay it. That is why he lived in a completely average, peeling paint brick home. That is why he drove a 12-year-old Honda. He understood that anonymity is the ultimate shield. By remaining completely invisible, he never attracted the leeches, the frivolous lawsuits, or the inflated invoices. But more importantly, he never became a hostage to his own ego. He did not care that his neighbors thought he was just a middle-class retiree barely scraping by. He traded the cheap, fleeting dopamine of public validation for absolute, unshakable generational freedom. This is the true architecture of old money. It is not about having a famous last name or inheriting a trust fund. It is a ruthless, disciplined operating system designed to protect you from the modern world. When you synthesize the 5 rules hidden inside that $4 book, the entire matrix of wealth building is instantly decoded. You stop hoarding cash, recognizing it as a melting block of ice, and instead deploy your dollars as soldiers to ruthlessly capture cash-flowing territory. You lock your principal inside an impenetrable vault, treating it as a sacred monolith, refusing to ever butcher the golden goose to feed a temporary desire. You escape the compounding trap of cheapness by purchasing deliberate, uncompromising quality that outlasts you. You categorically reject vanity debt, refusing to leverage your future to fund an illusion of your present. And finally, you bury it all. You step completely out of the arena of public opinion. You embrace the immense, quiet power of being underestimated. As I stood in that damp basement office, holding the battered blue book, I could hear the footsteps of the estate sale scavengers upstairs. They were frantically bidding against each other for Arthur's old silver spoons and a few tarnished vintage watches. They were fighting over the superficial, irrelevant residue of a man's life, utterly blind to the fact that the actual blueprint to his $45 million empire was sitting at the bottom of a cardboard box marked for $4. They were playing the algorithm's game. They were hunting for the aesthetic of wealth. But the truth, the unapologetic reality of financial freedom, is that the loudest people in the room are almost always the poorest. The moment you decide to stop performing your earnings, the moment you step off the exhausting treadmill of digital status and choose to become financially invisible, is the exact moment you actually begin to become rich. The game is entirely rigged, but you no longer have to play it. You can choose to stop bleeding your life force to fund an illusion. You can choose to protect your soldiers, guard your principal, and vanish into the absolute, impenetrable silence of true wealth. But stepping into that impenetrable silence is not a one-time decision. It is a daily, deliberate rebellion against a modern culture that is ruthlessly optimized to keep you loud, stressed, and fundamentally broke. Every single day, the machine will try to drag you back into the exhausting performance. It will constantly tempt you to trade your irreplaceable hours on this earth for hollow, depreciating validation. To survive this matrix, to actually execute the architecture of old money and build a quiet, compounding empire that outlasts you, you need more than just a single revelation in a damp basement. You need a constant, unyielding anchor to reality. You need to master the rest of the blueprint. That is exactly what we do here. On this channel, we categorically reject the aesthetic of wealth. We leave the estate sale scavengers upstairs to fight over the tarnished silver spoons, the luxury cars, and the superficial residue of a fake success. Instead, we are down here in the quiet, decoding the exact ruthless operating system of true financial freedom. We are systematically unpacking the forgotten rules, the psychological frameworks, and the invisible strategies that the quietly wealthy use to protect their capital, guard their time, and secure their absolute peace. If you are finally ready to stop performing your earnings for an audience that does not care about you, if you are entirely done paying the lethal visibility tax and want to learn how to strategically deploy your dollars as soldiers to capture real, cash-flowing territory, then you have found your exact place. Click the subscribe button right now. Do not just let this be another passing video you consume before returning to the algorithm's exhausting treadmill of digital status. By subscribing, you are planting your flag with a disciplined minority who are actively choosing unshakable generational freedom over cheap, fleeting dopamine. The modern economic machine is entirely engineered to strip you of your finite time and your most sacred resources. We are here to arm you with the exact knowledge to fight back. Hit subscribe, step permanently out of the arena of public opinion, and let us get to work building an empire that no one else can see.